Good morning to you and welcome to the World Today once again. Now, help me make sense of this. In Ivory Coast, what does the law say about an ex-president who would want to contest for another seat as a president?
Well, it's a matter of the constitution. Good morning and good morning or good afternoon to some of the viewers that I know are in the diaspora. Well, it all depends. As long as he's eligible according to the constitution, there is an age limit that has been spoken about. But, you know, the current government or the party in government at the moment has been able to overlook that because President Ouattara himself is 79. So there is that possibility that if that age restriction part of the constitution is not triggered or agreed upon, then former President Laurent Gbagbo would contest or be eligible, at least he's a citizen. But then there are all those legal issues. He's got that 20-year sentence that you were talking about. There are other things that need to be taken into context. But to his credit, he refused to commit outrightly whether he will contest or he will not. But he is the party leader of this new party that he has formed. But also he made a call that it is time for the older generation to leave the scene and allow a new crop of leaders to come about, because we know Ouattara is, older than Laurent Gbagbo, but Henri Konan Bedie also participated, and he is even 10 years older at 87.
Let's now talk about his arrival back to Cote d'Ivoire when he returned after he was acquitted by the court. Now, when he returned, he met a lot of crowd, cheers and all that. Could this be a reason why he thinks or believes that people want him back in power? And if he's given the nod, what does he bring back to the table?
No, it doesn't quite work like that. You have to remember, Laurent Gbagbo was the leader of Cote d'Ivoire. 2000 to 2011, he contested in those 2010 elections. His supporters have always refused to accept that he lost the election. Remember, at that time, most people might not remember, but there was a civil war in Ivory, in Cote d'Ivoire at the time. Laurent Gbagbo's supporters were saying they could not accept the outcome or the votes that were coming from the areas of the country where they believed there was no peace, where free and fair elections could not be held, where campaigning could not happen. And then, of course, there was the fighting where people from Ouattara's side were assisted by France, and the UN was looking to see what was happening. So all these charges came about because more than 3,000 people were killed during the course of that power contestation when Laurent Gbagbo was refusing to accept that he lost the election by virtue of the votes that had come from the areas where he thought there was no peace. And of course, Ouattara then became president. So I think the political support is not so much about the people that came at the airport or the people that we saw at this Congress of the new party. It is more about his belief that he has always had the support of the people of Cote d'Ivoire, and he never lost free and fair elections. Of course, that's history, but for now, we are where we are. Things have changed. Ouattara has been in government. He has proved that he can deliver. Cote d'Ivoire is probably the third biggest economy. Things were going well before the pandemic. And so there are a lot of things that have since changed. Politics, a week is a very long time in politics.
You just mentioned his beliefs, but could there be international influence connected to this?
Well, in actual fact, he is doing a Sankara. Because he's forming a party and he's already talking about the United States of Africa. He's basically saying it is time that Africans work together. He has criticized the ICC by virtually saying that this is an institution that has been formed to try and attack Africans. And he is basically going against the grain of those that want to win support from Western leaders, whether it's America or Paris or anywhere. So he is basically saying he wants to, it looks like a legacy issue. He wants now to focus on Africa and what Africans can do on their own without necessarily, waiting for the West to do something. Just look at COVID and what has happened with all these so-called vaccine apartheid, where people in the West are mostly having access to vaccines, but Africa is struggling quite a lot. So you might see the talk that he's doing now similar to what President Nana Akufo-Addo was saying when he was saying to France and others, it's time that Africa becomes quite self-reliant in so many ways. So it appears that this approach now is Laurent Gbagbo simply wanting to, carve a table for himself or a chair at that table of African leaders who talk about Pan-Africanism rather than just looking at what you want to win an election.
But what are his chances?
Well, it depends on who runs. And politics is quite it's quite a funny game sometimes. When you watch those pictures of President Ouattara, laughing and sharing coffee with Laurent Gbagbo, when Guillaume Sanko is in prison. So you just wonder, it depends on the alliances that are going to be formed there. If people like Bedia support Laurent Gbagbo, if Ouattara doesn't run, then his chances are very good indeed. But it is early days yet. There are so many years that one has to go through. We don't know what's going to happen to people in government. We don't know whether Laurent Gbagbo and Ouattara will remain friends towards the election. It all depends on what the political dynamics will actually be at the time. There could be another Obama, somebody who just comes from nowhere, who appeals to the youth, and that could change the entire situation in Cote d'Ivoire. It's too early to tell, but for now, looking at the people that are supporting him, looking at the aura around him, it appears that his chances will be good if things remain as they are.
Things remain as they are. What are some of these things that, if they remain as they are, he could emerge winner of the 2025 elections?
I think the most important thing is this call for reconciliation. Remember, you are talking about camps. You are talking about people that were fighting a war. You are talking about relatives of thousands of people that are still calling for justice. You are talking about all these other court cases that are in place. We know people like Simone Gbagbo, his wife or ex-wife. There are issues. The ICC has just say, well, they are not going to pursue that arrest warrant anymore. So if we see the camaraderie between President Ouattara and former President Laurent Gbagbo, if they continue to work together for peace within the country, then that peaceful environment will actually lead to probably free and fair elections, which Laurent Gbagbo would have a very good chance to win if he's a candidate. But if things start breaking down, if people go back to their ethnic groups and this political divide, non-compromising, then it becomes difficult. Take Ghana as an example. If you are from the Volta, probably you are supporting NTC, or you're from another part of the country and you support NPP, there are people who are interchangeable depending on what's happening in government. They can move from one side to the other, but that's because there's peace in the country by and large. If that peace was to break down in the way that Cote d'Ivoire and other countries have been, then it becomes difficult to reconcile those people. It becomes unacceptable for the cohort, for people in certain areas to vote for a candidate, even if they like the policies, they believe that candidate will actually be a good presidential candidate for the country. But so everything will depend on whether the peace that is obtaining in Cote d'Ivoire will prevail. And that can only prevail if Laurent Gbagbo and Alassane Ouattara work together to get that achieved.
Thank you so much for your time this year on the World Today here on Metro TV. I'm grateful for your time. Thamsanqua. Great. So yes, Thamsanqua Zhou is an international journalist who knows the terrain of African politics, and he's been here with us talking about Laurent Gbagbo, who has launched his campaign ahead of Ivory Coast's next election. Where does he stand? What are his chances? He came through with all those analyses. We'll go back to him as the story actually unfolds. Now let's